Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon solo video. Today we'll be using the best plunderer on the Great Lake, Pirate Gregor. He's a pretty interesting character, having both bleed and poise in his kit, though he's much more a poise identity than a bleed one. Half of his bleed infliction is dependent on him critting, and with somewhat lackluster poise generation, he can end up struggling to crit consistently. That's not to say his poise generation is bad. It's actually quite decent, but without support from other characters or eco gifts, it's fairly likely he will end up killing his own poise stack. At the very least though, before he does that, he will be able to get his main poise payoff to activate. Most poise identities have a skill where when they crit with it, they do an absurd amount of damage or some other special effect like reusing the coin 5 times in a row. Pirate Gregor's skill 3 is his main payoff skill, and while its main purpose is pure damage, I can say with absolute certainty that it is one of the best poise payoff skills in the entire game. At face value, it may not seem that interesting, only doing 100% bonus damage on crit, but that's without factoring in his own unique status effect of unjust enrichment. Every time he lands heads against an enemy with bleed, he will gain 1 up to a maximum of 4. Each one allows him to do 25% bonus damage with his skill 3, essentially doubling his already doubled damage. He is the only identity in the game capable of doing over 400 damage with a single coin, and there is just something so unbelievably satisfying about that. Before we get into the run though, I just want to take a moment and rant about the character that Pirate Gregor is based off of, Smee. I'm just disappointed with what they did with her, or I should say what they didn't do. The very first thing that popped into my mind when I saw her for the first time in Canto 5 was, oh my god, are we gonna get a Peter Pan abnormality? Half of the abnormalities Project Moon have created are based off of fairy tales, and one they have yet to do anything with is, of course, Peter Pan. So obviously when I see a character called Smee talking about Captain Hook, I'm assuming that they're going to be a major plot point and Peter Pan's going to show up. Of course, the end of Canto 5 rolls around and all we get instead is a clam and a stupid fish. I mean, I don't have anything against those fights in particular, or Canto 5 for that matter, but they're not Peter Pan, you know what I'm saying? All I can hope for is that Project Moon doesn't forget about Captain Hook's existence and he makes an appearance sometime in the future. Anyway, to start the run off, we take these starter buffs and pick the cigarette holder as our starting gift, before heading into the Foregone for the first floor. We also find Phlebotomy Pack, Blue Zippo Lighter, Bloody Gadget, and Lithograph before making it to the first boss against G-Corp. Getting all of the good solo eagle gifts before the first boss makes it very easy. Even without them though, it still wouldn't be that difficult as we don't take any real damage. It certainly helps that Gregor's skill 3 is basically just a delete button, allowing us to clear out the wave with very little effort. We take Prejudice and Ornamental Horseshoe for our reward before heading into Hell's Chicken for the next floor. Here we find the Contaminated Needle and Thread while also buying the 4-leaf Clover and an extra skill 2 before making it to the boss against Papa Bongi. This is a pretty simple boss fight. Dodge everything and shoot the chickens in the face. Not really much to talk about outside of that. Pretty easy fight.
먼저 끝내고 돌아오는 친구는
바람구멍을 내주지.
나만 믿고 다들 집중해줘.
바람구멍을 내주지.
방금 어떻게 하신 거죠? 깜짝 놀랐어요.
바람구멍을 내주지. 꼭 찢어진 것같이 흐느적거리는구만.
쨍들아, 부위가 조각났어. 계속해도 돼.
꼭 찢어진 것같이 흐느적거리는구만. 별것도 아니네.
닭들이 뭔가 기분이
바람구멍을 내주지. 별것도 아니네.
이제야 실력을 좀 내시네요. 평소에도 이러면 얼마나
별것도 아니네.
We take Wound Claret and Sharp Needle and Thread as our reward, while also receiving Nebulizer as a bonus before heading into Yield My Flesh for the next floor. Here we find Finifugality and buy Devil's Share while also fusing the Redstained Gossipium before making it to the boss against Bamboo-Hatted Kim. He is another genuinely easy boss. Just like before, we can dodge everything, and with the power of both bleed damage and Kim's Pride Fatality, he gets staggered incredibly quickly. And getting staggered against Pirate Gregor is the fastest way to end up with a bullet in your skull.
바람구멍을 내주지.
카론, 기다리는 것 같아.
바람구멍을 내주지.
이런 건 몽둥이가 약이지. 너 두드려 패.
바람구멍을 내주지. 하나 가져가.
칼날이 잘 드네요. 아마 그 공격이 약점이었겠죠?
We take the Thorny Path and Red Tassel as our reward before heading into Crawling Abyss for the next floor. Here we buy the Ruptured Blood Sac and fuse Endorphin Kit before making it to the boss against the Skin Prophet. This fight doesn't even last a minute. Outside of stalling for the first few turns, waiting for the Prophet to become vulnerable, he dies incredibly quickly. With him being fatal to gloom damage and our most powerful skill being gloom, he quite literally doesn't stand a chance.
늦으면 미키랑 먼저 갈 거야.
바람구멍을 내주지.
저희도 가서 도와줄까요, 돌신에?
바람구멍을 내주지. 하나 가져가.
방금 좀 똑똑했다. 옛날에 조직에서 싸우고 눈에 바로 적을 다 밀어버리는 놈이 있었지.
별것도 아니.
돈 하나가 끊어졌네요. 이제 좀 수월해지겠어요.
We take Talisman Bundle and Cetacean Heart for our reward before heading into Unrelenting Might for the final floor. Here we buy Torn Bandolier and an extra skill 3 before making it to one of the hardest fights in the run. The hardest fight is actually not any of the bosses. That's pretty much impossible for any Evade identity, but was in fact the crabs. Now the crabs themselves don't actually do any real meaningful damage, and we can kill them incredibly quickly, but that in and of itself is the problem. By being too strong, the crabs we kill get replaced by more crabs who keep inflicting more and more rupture until eventually we die. It's kind of funny how the whole backup mechanic is really dangerous for strong identities because if you do too well, you end up getting punished for it. Thankfully though, Pirate Gregor has one trick up his sleeve that makes it much easier to deal with. As long as he's attacking an enemy with 2 skill slots, he can completely deplete their entire health bar with a single skill 3 and use an evade to dodge everything else. He's actually really good in backup fights because if he can kill at least one enemy every turn, it really doesn't matter how many there are.
하나 챙겼다.
바람구멍을 내주지. 하나 가져가.
완전 프레스 챙겼어, 나리! 적의 약점이 뻔히 보이는 게로군. 대체 상태가 좋지 않아 보여.
바람구멍을 내주지.
어서 할 수 있는 건 다 해보고 오라고.
바람구멍을 내주지. 하나 가져가.
완벽한 한방. 시원한걸?
별것도 아니네.
부탁금 한방 먹었어. 대성공이야. 가론 신나. 노래 부를까?
After dealing with the crabs, we make it to the actual final boss against Dongbeg. She is genuinely an impossible fight if you don't have an evade, as her blooming status effect will insta-kill you if she hits you one too many times. She's pretty easy to beat with the exception of one turn in particular. Sometime during her second phase, she will use the skill Magnificent Spring Breeze, which is powerful enough to stagger us. And if we get staggered, we lose thanks to her special status effect. The only reason it's so powerful is because it gains base power for every one of her flowers that are alive, and with those flowers being fairly weak, it would be pretty easy to deal with by simply destroying them. However, there are two problems with that in particular. First, you can't destroy the flowers on the turn before she uses the skill, as she'll simply spawn new ones, and second, it's in her leftmost skill slot, so we're forced to clash with it first before destroying any of the flowers. None of our egos are powerful enough to beat it either, so that's out of the question. The best way to beat it is to simply tank the attack. It doesn't inflict enough blooming to insta-kill us thankfully, so as long as it doesn't stagger us, we're fine. Instead of clashing with it, we end up clashing with everything else and use an ego to ensure all of the flowers die and weaken the attack significantly. As soon as we survive that, the fight's over. Dongbeg doesn't have any more gimmicks powerful enough to be able to beat us.
자, 이걸로 대신하지.
본인이 방금 뭘 본 것인가? 엄청나게 강한 일격을!
하나만 가져간다.
와, 엄청난 공격이었어. 기념할 만한걸?
하나만 가져간다.
방금 건 제대로 된 공격이 아니었는데. 혹시 너희들 중에
바람구멍을 내주지. 하나만 가져간다.
나리의 속 깊은 뜻을 본인이 헤아리기엔 쉽지 않나 보네.
하나만 가져간다.
그걸 그 무기로 때리시면. 자, 동료들이여.
바람구멍을 내주지. 별것도 아니네. 싹 다 정리해버렸네. 아, 이러면 돈이 덜 나오는데. 이놈들 지갑 좀 볼까?
And that's how I soloed Mirror Dungeon 5 hard using only Pirate Gregor. He's a very fun identity. Hitting over for 400 damage with a single coin is just so satisfying every single time it happens. Gregor's identities might be mid for the most part, but Pirate Gregor certainly isn't. Anyway, that's it from me. Like and subscribe to not miss next time where we'll be using this character. Goodbye.